Alter Bridge has a catalog of over 100 incredible songs, but let's be honest, we tend to fixate on specific ones like their massive epics, emotional power ballads, or barn-burning radio singles. And that's why today we're gonna look at 5 more underrated Alter Bridge songs that you definitely need to check out. And make sure to stick around to the end, because the last one is probably gonna surprise any frequent viewers of this channel. Let's start off with a controversial opinion. I think The Last Hero deserves a lot more credit than it often gets. I know there are plenty of people who will agree with that statement as well as disagree, but one reason I'd like to present in support of my argument is in the form of this first song, The Writing on the Wall. I swear, I don't think I've seen anybody talk about this online in the last 12 months, and that is an utter shame, because it has one of my favorite drum parts across Alter Bridge's entire discography. Following the fantastic opener of the album, another criminally underrated song, this one reinforces the concept that The Last Hero is not going to be a subtle record. It's loud and in your face, and I love it. The track has this great groove to it, like Tremonti's B-side Gone, and then when you get to the chorus, Scott really cranks the groove up to a new level. I particularly love the little double kick rough he does at the end of each phrase, mirrored by the guitar part. That little fill is one of his signatures, like at the beginning of Isolation or in the first guitar solo in Buried Alive. But I can't talk about this song without also mentioning the bridge. I friggin' love the breakdown in this song. That broad halftime is a fantastic contrast to the rest of the track, and then the guitar solo is pretty solid. But of course, the standout is the unison riff played at the very end. It's literally the exact same rhythm as Gone by Tremonti, dotted eighth notes, but this time Scott plays dotted eighths on both the kick drum and China cymbal, meaning the polyrhythm feels even more jagged and aggressive than in Gone. Every time I play this part on the kit, it feels so satisfying to nail, and I always go away from it with a smile. The Writing on the Wall is a powerful, bouncy track that definitely deserves more attention than it's received since the release of The Last Hero. Highly recommend you check this song out if you're not already a fan of it. Up next is a Walk the Sky track called Clear Horizon, once again featuring the impeccable Scott Phillips. I've gone on record stating Walk the Sky is my least favorite Alter Bridge record, but this one by far is one of my favorite tracks from the album, and it frequently makes its way into my drumming rotation. Why? Because of that goddamn tasty double kick in the chorus, that's why. But before we get there, we gotta go back to the beginning. Starting in a fashion quite the opposite from our last song, this one is more of a slow build to a bombastic climax. And when it finally reaches that first full band interlude, you really get that sense of Alter Bridge's unique command of sound. Then with the verse, it's restless and jam-packed with that 16th note riff taking up your attention. Scott keeps pace with his own busy part, and just when you think it might start to wear on you, the pre-chorus and chorus offer some much needed space without letting up the intensity. And as I said before, Scott's unison double kick part is just utter perfection. He doesn't use double kick a whole lot on this record, but this has got to be one of the most tasteful instances of it in all of Alter Bridge's music. And speaking of tasty, let's talk about that funky prog section during the bridge. I don't know a whole lot of Tool, but I get the sense that Scott was likely inspired by them for that part. I can't think of a more complex rhythmic section in any Alter Bridge song, except for maybe Last Man Standing from the newest album, and that's saying something considering Clear Horizon is strictly in 4/4. On a record where many songs have rather understated rhythm section parts, this one truly lets every member of the band shine at one point or another. It's a great song that I'd love to see performed live someday, though I know it would be a challenging one given the accuracy required to nail all those unisons and weird spots in the bridge. Either way, go give this song some attention if you haven't recently. The next underrated track I'd like to discuss goes back to Alter Bridge's sophomore album Blackbird, with the song being Coming Home. It should come as no surprise to say I love the drums in this song. And to be honest, all of the songs on today's list have great drums, so you know that I gotta talk about them. With this particular track, we go back to an era where Scott was more loose and free-flowing with his parts. Now that's not to say that his parts nowadays are stiff or metronomic or anything like that, just that they seem more intentional and a little less cluttered. In the early days of Alter Bridge, Scott would add in a lot of embellishments to his parts, and Coming Home is a prime example of that. In this track, it works really well because the whole song has this frantic energy that just wouldn't be possible without all of Scott's hi-hat licks and tom fills. His ridiculously fast 16th note fills are what you normally hear from punk or metal music, and not usually hard rock. His tendency to do that in Alter Bridge's first 2 records greatly contributes to this band standing apart from pretty much every other artist in their genre. You just can't lump Alter Bridge into a single category without someone chiming in and saying, well, what about this song? It's kind of got thrash parts. What about this one? It sounds like old school metal. They're just a fluid group of musicians who experiment a ton and are constantly keeping us guessing in what they do next. And Coming Home is just one example of this. Coming from Creed and One Day Remains, I doubt anyone would have predicted the band would write such aggressive songs as Coming Home, Ties That Bind, or White Knuckles, but they did, and it made for some truly spectacular music. Anyways, if you're like me and you love high energy tracks with a lot of speed and intensity, you just can't go wrong with Coming Home. But of course, if you're like me, you've probably listened to a lot of loud music during your life without proper hearing protection. You might have also developed a rather unpleasant condition called tinnitus, where you have a constant irritating ringing in your ears, accompanied by maybe not being able to understand others as clearly as you'd like. Whether you have this condition already or you're now concerned about developing it, you need good earplugs when you go to concerts to protect your hearing. And there's genuinely no better option for musicians and concert goers than Vibes earplugs. Instead of muffling loud sounds, they filter them to make live music safe and enjoyable for longer periods of time. Plus, they're surprisingly discreet, comfortable, and sizable, so you're guaranteed to find a fit that works for you without anyone even realizing that you're wearing them. They're already the most affordable premium earplug on the market, but with my promo code CC15OFF, you can get 15% off your purchase at discovervibes.com. That purchase also supports this channel and allows me to continue making content about the bands we love. So if you want to protect your ears and support an independent creator, check out Vibes. Thanks to them for sponsoring the video, and now let's move on to number 4. Yet another track from Walk the Sky that deserves more attention than it gets is In the Deep, the 3rd promotional single released for the album. As you can see on screen right now, this song has a really unique music video that I love, but I'm also biased towards water art because my girlfriend's love of sea turtles has rubbed off on me lately. Regardless, I gotta say that this song has one of my favorite riffs from the entire album, and it's only used in the introduction. It's incredibly simple, comprised mostly of an arpeggiated major chord, but the guitar tone plus the sustained open 5th underneath it all give it a much grander feeling than one might expect from such a simple melody. Add on the flat 6th note at the end of the 2nd bar, resolving back down to the open 5th, which just so happens to be one of my favorite interval motions, and this incredibly simple passage becomes much more interesting and distinct than how it seems on paper. And that's all in the first 10 seconds before any other parts join in. The rest of this song is awesome as well, but for very different reasons. Miles has this great vocal part for the verses, and the chorus rhythm section parts sound like they belong in a dark, heavy metal track, when in fact, this is one of the brightest and most uplifting songs of the entire record. Somehow, it just all works together, despite many of the sections of this track seeming quite different when put under the microscope. As I've said before, Alter Bridge are masters of stitching together radically different ideas into cohesive, complex songs that feel natural and yet never predictable. You won't find a better example of this than with In the Deep, so make sure to give it some love if this one doesn't regularly appear in your lineup. And finally, let's go back to Blackbird and a concept I brought up during the first song I mentioned from this album. Scott stated in the making of documentary for this record that he plays mostly by feel.
My particular style of drumming is feel the song, feel the vibe of what either Mark or Miles is playing, and I try to do everything by feel.
And if there's one song that embodies this idea more so than anything else, it's Break Me Down. I know, I'm a registered hater of this song, but I gotta give credit where credit is due. Scott's part during the verses is probably one of the most tasteful and unique parts he's ever written.
Tonight, the time has come.
Back when I used to listen to this song more often, I loved playing along to those sections, and sometimes I would just skip over everything else in the song just to play the verse over and over and over again. And I can point to this song as a clear example of Scott's influence on my own drumming. I also play mostly by feel, and tracks like this one were what I focused on during the most formative years of my development on the kid. I absorbed a lot of his style back then, and I still see it creeping into my drumming nowadays. So even though I'm not a fan of the primary riff or the chorus or the bridge or anything like that and Break Me Down, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge its quality and importance in my own life. Maybe that makes me a little hypocritical, but at the end of the day, I don't outright hate any Alter Bridge songs. I just love certain ones less. You know, like you do with Types of Candy or Children. Of course, Alter Bridge has many more underrated tracks than the 5 I mentioned today, so let me know your favorites down in the comments. And check out this video about 5 more underrated Alter Bridge tracks to see if they've already made an appearance on the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.